Bonjour et bienvenue à toutes et à tous à cette rencontre. Thales, a very warm welcome for those of you who are following us this morning on YouTube and on Thales at Thales Group. We are very happy to welcome you this morning. Cette conférence se déroulera en français avec une traduction simultanée en anglais. Avec nous ce matin pour nous parler de la finalisation de cette acquisition et des débouchés pour nos clients, Patrice Kane, président de Thales, Philippe Vallée, directeur général adjoint identité et sécurité numérique de Thales, et Philippe Kerry, directeur adjoint stratégie, recherche et technologie de Thales. Je passe la parole sans plus tarder à notre président directeur général, Patrice Kane. Merci.
Merci Cédric et bonjour, bonjour à tous ce matin. Je vais faire quelques mots d'introduction rapides et puis je laisserai la parole aux deux Philippe, Philippe Vallée et Philippe Carrier, qui m'entourent. Déjà pour vous dire que c'est une journée historique pour le groupe, puisque c'est une acquisition qui est vraiment transformante. C'est la plus grosse par sa taille, mais je pense que ce n'est pas ça le paramètre le plus important. Elle est certainement la plus transformante de celle qu'on a réalisée depuis ces 20 dernières années. Aujourd'hui, c'est à la fois un aboutissement.
It's the outcome, the result of 15 months of hard work. I'm looking at my two colleagues, says Patrice Kane. So we managed to close this deal, and it's a new start of an adventure, industrial and technological adventure future with this acquisition of Gemalto by Thales. Allow me to highlight three key ideas that come to mind when we look at what we will be doing as of today. First of all, this acquisition materializes or illustrates the position of a group, one of the biggest technological groups in Europe, with a huge firepower. Of course, I'm humble, modest, but our firepower is really significant. We are a group worth 19 million euros in terms of sales or turnover, 28,000 people working in R&D, 3,000 high-caliber researchers working on different topics, upstream topics. Moreover, 1 billion self-financed research and development. So today, this operation bears out or bolsters Thales as a group in this field. The second idea that comes to mind, we are a world global leader in the field of digital identity and digital security. Allow me to zero in on that point. So in the field of identity, you have to consider digital identity. When you talk about digital identity, you have to think in terms of the Internet of Things. We have data analytics, the Internet of Things, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence. When I talked about the Internet of Things, we tended to talk about connectivity, connectivity of objects, in fact, connectivity of things. This is what we see when we have a look at connected things or connected objects. Having said that, there's a prerequisite that is pivotal. In order to connect a thing or an object, a network, it's important to identify the objects. Digital identification is one of the core competencies of Gemalto. So digital identity spans lots of technologies, biometrics, people's technology, and it's something that is fundamental. And then data protection. Data protection turns out to be a key component in cybersecurity. This is one of our core businesses where we're involved in data protection. Gemalto is strong also in terms of data protection. So by pooling our efforts, by pooling our skills, we are one of the most powerful stakeholders, players in this field. This is a key field in data security. So data privacy, data as a whole have huge implications in terms of challenges made for cities, towns, big companies, big administrations, big players. So we want to be a world leader in digital identification and identity. And then you have to consider the acceleration of a group through Gemalto. So our global reach, our global dimension will be beefed up. This is one of the key strategic linchpins of a group when we talk about the strategic streams. We've said over the past few years that it is indispensable to be international, but to be globalized. It's important, to be more involved in terms of sales, R&D, and teams have to be quite close to our customers and clients, because this is what our customers and clients want. This is what they demand. Our customers and clients would like intellectual property to be close to them, and the engineering and development experts. The presence of Gemalto in different countries will enable us to increase fivefold our presence in South America and Central America, to increase threefold our presence in Asia, North Asia, Southeast Asia. We'll be able to beef up our presence in North America. So it is one of the key aspects of this acquisition, of this strategic moment that I wanted to touch upon this morning. So without further ado, I will give the floor to Philip. Philip, to my right, to my left. Philip Vallée, go ahead. Thank you, Patrice, for giving me the floor. First of all, good morning to all of you. I'm delighted to be part and parcel of this new team, and Gemalto's team has had time to get prepared for this integration with Thales, and all the teams are ready to embark upon this new adventure. In order to follow up on what Patrice said, allow me to talk about the digital life cycle. So you are the future customer of a player working on the internet. What is the situation like today? So the acquisition of a customer, keeping in touch with a customer, will be done online with a smartphone, with a PC. It is the first identification process when it comes to connecting with customers, so you can check the identity. I can give you some examples. Airbnb, Dropbox, Uber, all of these players, all these companies will get in touch with their customers using the digital life cycle. So you use the service very often, and according to the nature of these transactions that you will have with the service provider, this will require an authentication process. If it's a matter of checking the balance of a bank account, if it's a matter of checking the availability of a room, authentication will be low. But if it's a matter of transferring money from one account to another, the authentication process will be boosted with different means. So Patrice has talked about that. There are lots of data. You have private data, personal data, so data should be protected. This is what we call data protection in English. We can combine Gemalto and Thales assets, and I can tell you that we have a significant firepower. This is the third step of the digital life cycle. And at last, this is something that is important. You want to turn to competitors for an equivalent service. You will turn to the supplier that is next door on the internet because the services are more performing, the offer is more interesting. So you have to jettison your previous suppliers to make sure that your data can't be used by a third party once you've moved to another service provider. The right to oblivion. So the digital life cycle is important. So Gemalto teams will be able to focus on identity management, person management, object management, and things management, and data protection. So the other Philippe Carrier will be talking about that. When you have a look at the critical vision of Thales, Gemalto's technologies will be in sync with this critical management system. So in terms of geography, so Gemalto's teams work in different countries. We are at the heart of the digital factory of Thales. Thales and Thales opened a new site in Singapore. So in Singapore, Thales and Gemalto are deeply involved. So from Singapore, it's a huge operations base. Will be able to be more powerful with the Singapore point. And it is true that we want to make the most of this momentum because things are moving fast in Asia. And then you have to consider the contribution to the contribution of the underlying technologies, biometrics. Philippe will provide us with some examples. Biometrics, it's a technological solution that will enable us to improve friendliness, conviviality between people in terms of digital exchanges, more fluid, more smooth exchanges. There's an element that we insist on. So biometrics will be more active, should be more active, should be more sales-driven. Gemalto has launched recently with banking partners a card with a reader of biometric fingerprints. You don't need to use your secret code in order to generate a transaction. You will use your contactless bank card, and you won't have to type in your secret code. So biometrics is now more into the commercial domain, and this will be very important for DIS GBU. I will be now turn to Philip. So I will try to give you an insight into the new face of Thales. So Thales, with Gemalto, Thales becomes the genuine, fully fledged laboratory of the future. So the firepower will be significant, will be strong, 19 billion in terms of turnover, 80,000 people. But there's something that is quite important. As part of its new configuration, Thales will have all of the technologies in order to have a good command of the critical decision-making processes for corporations, for states, for organizations, and for companies as well. And as Philippe Vallée pointed out, with the strength of Gemalto and with the digital aspects, with data protection, Thales will be able to create safe and secure solutions so that the future is bright. So we have a common passion for technology, and it's a bedrock. And we have 80,000 employees. The innovation power of the group will be quite significant. 3,000 researchers, 1 billion euros in terms of self-financed R&D, 28,000 people working in research and development. Moreover, a portfolio of patents that will be quite significant because it will be 20,500 patents, and we table 400 new patent requests. This illustrates the technological firepower of a group. Second element, with the acquisition of Gemalto, it is in line with the acceleration of the digital industries at Thales. This acquisition is part and parcel of the Ambition 10 plan, a 10-year blueprint. And Patrice has used this metaphor. We want to be a leader across all the markets based on sustainable and profitable growth, but we need to build on innovation, competitiveness, and our ability to get the best talents on the market. We are currently facing a war on talents. If you have a look at the situation of the digital industry, the situation has accelerated. We invested 7 billion euros through acquisitions. I mean, we made some organic investments as well, investments in big data with Guavus, in data protection with Vormetric, and as Philippe pointed out, we created some digital factories. We are at WeWork in the center of Paris, but we have 2 other digital factories, one in Montreal and one in Singapore, as Philippe pointed out. We've been working with our surrounding ecosystems, especially in the field of cybersecurity. We are the leader in the stream cybersecurity at Station F. This was the second element that I wanted to highlight. A third element that I would like to put forward. Thales and Gemalto mean a mutual enrichment, technical and commercial enrichment. So you will have DRS, so digital identity and security, and will be able to transform the digital organization of many organizations and markets, i.e. the connected vehicle, banking transactions, or telecommunications operators. The first element is the following. In this new Gemalto will be enriched with the technological capabilities and capacities of Thales in the fields of big data, artificial intelligence, and in data protection. This is the first element. But this the seventh biggest business activity will be able to be beefed up. So there are new capabilities, identities, digital identity. So we'll be able to master all of the technologies in order to control all the critical decision-making processes in aerospace, in defense, in security, in ground transportation. And I will pick up two concrete examples of this kind of mutual enrichment. First example, Gemalto in 2017 launched, and Philip talked about that. So in partnership with the big banks, launched a program in order to help banks in order to implement silent authentication processes. It's a matter of being able to detect some silent signatures. I mean, the way you type on your board, the way you move the mouse on your keyboard. So it means that lots of data could be tapped. And with data, you can make some comparisons and benchmarks. Thales artificial intelligence solutions will be in a position to beef up processes with big banks. So silent authentication will be useful in the big IT systems of Thales, command centers, or air traffic management centers. It was the first example. Second example. Now, it's clear that we are facing with a new trend. The use of drones has been widespread. This business has skyrocketed. We don't know exactly when this phenomenon will really take root in the future, but the integration of drones into air traffic is very complicated. It is at the heart of Thales business activities, because in terms of air traffic, two planes out of three can take off thanks to Thales systems, but with the digital solutions of Gemalto, i.e. the introduction of a strong authentication process, will be able to create solutions that will make the integration of drones into air traffic safer. So, by way of conclusion, with the expertise and know-how of Gemalto, the new Thales company would be able to be involved in the digital chain, taking into account lots of applications. I mean, bank applications, banking applications, when you want to pay with your phone, and it's a clear example. I mean, I've given you already an example. So we will be able to create solutions so that air traffic is safer and more secure with the drones or UAVs. So now time for a Q&A session. Oh, before the Q&A session, allow me to thank the teams, our teams, says Mr. Patrice Kane. Our teams have worked very hard in addition to their daily stint. So they've worked hard in order to close the transaction. So all the teams were committed. I mean, hats off to the teams. I mean, teams from Gemalto and teams from Thales. We have lots of new things to do, but allow me to thank our teams. I'd like to thank the shareholders, I mean, who followed us, I mean, with this transformative operation. Technologically, industrially, and financially, the shareholders have always been with us the past few years, and especially the two main shareholders, the state and the Dassault Group. So I'd like to thank them for their trust and for their confidence over the long haul. and they will continue to support the development of Thales. So this is time now for a Q&A session. I think that you're ready. So go ahead. So it is 9 a.m. on the dot, so we have 30 minutes. So if you have some questions, if you want to put some questions, go ahead, Delphine. Delphine, go ahead. The next step, what is the next step in practical terms regarding shareholders, regarding operations? What are the next stages if you get the 95%, if you don't get the 95%, what's going to happen? I will give you two kinds of answers. So in terms of industrial matters, we'll have to integrate the teams. So it's important, to set up these new offers, the new value propositions from a technical viewpoint now regarding shareholders. So we've got 86% of shareholders of Gemalto. They provided us with their shares. We want to reach the threshold of 95% of shares. We will be able to use the quiz out. The 5 remaining percent of shareholders will be able to provide their shares, and Gemalto will be delisted. But I think that we will be able to make it. Véronique, go ahead. Good morning. Regarding the new division, DIS, if I'm not mistaken, what are the ambitions, the outlook in terms of growth of business activities, in terms of profitability? What is the position of DIS versus the competitive environment? Who is the first competitor, Atos or foreign groups? Philippe, you will be able to step in. So DIS is part of the global business, is part of the global business unit of the group. But when we talk to the financial community, we refer to segments: defense and security, aerospace, ground transportation, and in the future we'll have a GIS, as I told you. So this is an internal organization. So with DIS, we'll have digital business activities. The transfer of Thales e-security to DIS will be forthcoming together with Guavus, and the digital factory will remain a corporate asset. Regarding the business outlook, Philippe, can you chip in? Yes, you put a question about competition. As you know, so before the acquisition of Thales, we focused on our 2 big markets. First, the mature markets, the legacy business activity of a company, the SIM cards and the bank cards. You have mainstream players on this market. Bankers and mobile telephony operators are digitalizing their interactions with their customers and clients, who are facing new players, new stakeholders in terms of remote digital identification for a bank. So you have different players, you have some startups being involved, and we have a second category of business activities, our growth markets. You have the government, so the Internet of Things, and the company, and you have lots of different players and different competitors. Regarding the Internet of Things, the main competitor is Sierra Wireless, based in the US, in terms of data protection. For the companies, we have Entrust Data Card, EDS. This is an American company, EDS, Entrust Data Card. So EDS, it is one of the many examples. And regarding government, you have NEC, who is a player in biometrics. We don't have a global competitor to DIS, it depends on the market segments. The mature markets are stable by definition, but regarding government markets, the outlook for growth is quite significant. Most governments don't have a good digital policy. The French government is still thinking about the management of digital identity. Will there be a digital ID card in France, for example? But in the EU, we have 28 or 27 countries, but there are 24 countries that have switched to digital objects, or there are lots of companies that are under attack, identity usurpation. So we need to equip lots of companies, and you have GDPR. So the companies need to be equipped with digital solutions regarding the Internet of Things. You've heard about the advent of 5Gs. There will be lots of objects and things to be connected. So billions of objects will have to be connected. Tens of billions of objects and things will be connected. Philip has talked about drones. Drones are not yet connected. We'll have to connect drones. So the outlook, the market outlook is quite impressive. Any other question? Patrice, you said that with this acquisition, Thales will be among the best technological groups in Europe. We talk about a B2C group. With the acquisition of Gemalto, does it mean that the Thales model will change? So moving from B2B to B2C with the card technology. So does it mean that the group is heading for B2C business? So there's no such thing as a single definition of technology. So I just want to highlight what we are becoming, especially if you take into account our history, our story. A fully fledged defense group. That was the case 20 or 30 years ago. So when we talk about technology, I mean, we tend to think about GAFAM, but it's a shortcut. I mean, there are lots of companies investing in technologies, not only GAFAM. The acquisition of Gemalto, does it mean that we are closer to the B2C business? Yes and no. But Gemalto clients and customers are similar to those of Thales. These are big institutions, cities, towns, states, home ministries, phone operators, banks, and big corporate names. These are customers and clients that we are familiar with. So we know them all. But with the B2B business, you have a citizen, you have a consumer. So if you take the business activities of Thales, so IFE, $1 billion in terms of sales, so we are playing ball with airlines. This is B2B business, but you have to consider the feedback of the passengers, of the customers and clients as well. So with the acquisition of Gemalto, this doesn't change the profile of the group in this segment. So IFE means in-flight entertainment, because we've been using, lots of acronyms in our companies. So that's why I wanted to shed light on this acronym. So multimédia de bord in French, so IFE, in-flight entertainment. Any other questions? So Marc-Antoine Marler, a journalist at the AEF agency. So what were the different stages regarding the in terms of the competition authorities? We wanted to get 14 authorizations, so we got 12 out of 14 authorizations. And so authorizations in Russia, antitrust authorization, and authorization for foreign investments, the equivalent of the IEF authorization in France. I'm not going to talk about the technicalities, but we have a provision. The offer would be unconditional. We closed the operation without waiting for these two authorizations, but in principle it doesn't pose any problem. It's a matter of administration. It is not a substantive problem so much for the 14 authorizations. And of course, we need to get the blessing, the agreement, the green light of the nature of the acquire of the business activity that we are currently divesting. So HSM, security, material, models, general purpose, in fact. So we divested that to interest data card, so it has to be validated by the Commission and by the Department of Justice, but this is done with the European Commission and the Department of Justice in a very smooth way. But we need to do it. We need to get the authorizations. Any other questions? Vincent? A financial question. In June 2018, you delivered some presentations to the financial markets. So these presentations are a little bit null and void. I mean, following this transformative acquisition. So what is the outlook for growth and profitability for the group with Gemalto? So to answer your question, it will be a two-step process. So we'll turn to the shareholders, we'll turn to investors before the summer. The idea is to talk about 2019. We'll be able to talk about the new group. So we gave some guidance in 2019 for Thales before the acquisition, but now we need to communicate again, and we need to specify things for 2019 before the summer. And then after summer, we will turn to our investors again. We will organize a capital market day akin to that of June 2018. We'll be focusing on Gemalto and Thales. What does it mean in terms of value creation, in terms of growth? So we want to revisit what we've said about Thales in the past, but we'll be focusing on the new acquisition with Gemalto and Thales. So this will be done after the summer. So we talked about cost synergies, and we made some commitments in terms of figures. When we announced the transaction, the bracket is between 100 and 150 million in terms of cost synergies. I mean, we didn't take over Gemalto for cost synergies. We need to do that, but revenue synergies, I mean, will be touched upon after summer. Value creation, revenues. So you will have to be patient if you want to know more, but we are working very hard on that topic. The SIM card business has a good future at Thales. So the situation has improved, but it's an interesting business activity for Thales and for the new group. So the SIM card business activity accounts for 15% of Gemalto. So you have to put things in perspective. Especially if you consider this business activity as part of DIS. This business activity was at the heart of the technological bedrock when we talk about digital identification, identity. We managed to focus on IoT, the Internet of Things. I mean, what is important is to make the most of the technological core businesses the bank card and the SIM cards, but in this market there are lots of new changes. We know that competition is quite brisk, but profitability is there. But we'll see what's going to happen. We've been profitable. We will continue to manage this business in a very competitive environment. I mean, I can't tell you more about that. We'll be developing the array of DIS activities, and we have some leeway as well. Do you want to add something, Philippe? No, thank you. Veronica, after this big acquisition, the most significant acquisition in years, so what about the external growth policy? Is it over or not? Or do you think that you need to make other acquisitions in order to acquire some technological building blocks so that you can beef up your position as a technological leader? Especially in technologies where you are not the best. So, answer. So we haven't said that we can do everything, that we have an all-encompassing view of things. I mean, open innovation, co-innovation. This does not mean acquisitions. In terms of open acquisition, we want to forge partnerships with 50 laboratories, economic laboratories. We want to be involved with Starbus, with Station F, Syntec in Montreal. So we want to work with incubators in order to bolster our position. But this is not nothing to do with acquisition here. And the group can also make targeted acquisitions in order to supplement the technological portfolio of the group, especially when it's necessary to acquire and not necessarily a co-development structure or a partnership structure. So with the acquisition of Gemalto, it's not a financial matter. It's rather a matter of a managerial bandwidth. It's just the start of the story today. So there were years of integration. You need to take into account the industrial and technological situation. So we'll be focusing on the success of this operation. It will be quite time-consuming for managers. It won't be wise, or it wouldn't be wise to envisage an acquisition of the same size in the near future. Alain, after the acquisition of Gemalto, what will be the distribution of the turnover of sales between the civil and military businesses? 60-40, 60 for civil and 40 for defense. So today it's about 50-50. But what matters is to get a good balance of our business activities. We have business models that are quite complementary. The defense business activity finances the great bulk of the R&D. So I've mentioned the support of the Ministry of Defense, and we are at the best technological level across many technologies, but the civil is very complementary. The civil business is very complementary, but the R&D is not financed by the major civil customers and clients. But these civil activities are moving fast, better and more agile process. 60-40, 50-50, it doesn't really matter. It's a matter of balance, in fact. But does it depend on performance? But if you were to ask me, are we going to make some acquisitions in the defense business? Why not? But it's a complex process, it's time-consuming, And as far as I know, there are no defense assets that are up for sale, or defense assets that could be divested by companies. Any other questions? So, no question? So, if there is no other question, I'd like to thank you for your presence. So, we are 15 minutes ahead of time, so you will have to follow my colleague, and you will be able to look at